Hello everyone. So I'm sure we heard about this before. I talked about this before about people who didn't even exist who had their names on the register to vote in last year's local election, last year's European election, and of course the general election too. Some people didn't even exist. They had their names down. There was no record of them even existing in this state, and this is very worrying. And not to mention people that have moved away. Who've emigrated, take for example to Australia, didn't take their name off the register. But yeah, it's very, very worrying because they estimate it's 500,000 people. It's a lot of people. When you think about Ireland, it's only about 5 million people, or give or take. But it's insane. But again, there's always going to be errors. I'll tell you a story now in a second. But there's always going to be errors of people getting two voting cards, etc. That's always going to happen. But it's different when people don't even exist and they vote in the election and stuff like that. It doesn't make much sense, but you can read it here. It's quite extensive. That the estimate is about 500,000, which is a lot of people. So I estimate it's about 100,000 people maybe have left the state. That could be that for 100,000, but there's no really answer for the rest of them really. So out of that 500,000, say for example, they're not sure, etc. There's not 500, but just for argument's sake, if it's 500,000, that's only about maybe 100,000. I say that's left the state, so it's about 400,000. So where did the 400,000 people get their votes from? Because so many people who probably were not entitled to vote did vote in the election and shouldn't have voted. So it needs to be figured out because, as you know, what's coming up next, the presidential election in literally a few months' time. We'll be sitting here in a few months' time. In November, would you believe? Because today is the May the 4th, would you believe? So it needs to be all sorted out. This needs to be done and dusted by November. I don't know where they do it because it's the Irish state, you have to remember. As you say, 11 across the country, more people than were on the electoral register than the population that's eligible to vote. Like, say for example in Cavan, there was a few more people voted. They shouldn't have voted pretty much. But I know, man, just the posting stuff again, this is just to do with technical errors. Because again, there's some technical errors that happens. He lives up in West Cavan, this part of Cavan. He's kind of iffy between Middletown and Bowturbet. So pretty much he's in the middle. He's pretty much so close to the two towns that he got two cards to vote. This is in the general election gone by. And he came to me about it. And this is the thing. This is the weirdest thing about it. That I thought he had a different, like it was a different name on the two cards. Like there were two different names. No, the same name, the same number, the same address. I don't know how they messed it up. How was that was messed up? But he was only entitled to vote in Milltown, take for example, in his pretty much where he near enough to his house, pretty much the closest school to his house. But also Bowturbet was very close to him, so he got two cards pretty much to vote in the general election. Now obviously only for him flagging it. He could have voted in 2 hours. There was nothing really stopping. It was legitimate ballots. There was nothing like it was a fake ballot or anything. Like it was a legitimate ballot. He could have voted if he wanted to vote in 2 hours. In the two schools in the same constituency, of course. But it's the fact of the matter that you're only entitled to one ballot. But still, we got it sorted. Then we figured out where we were supposed to be. And all that, but it was a technical error because I talked to the person who was over the elections, sending out the papers, etc., for the election was for people to vote, and it was an error in some computer error, just goes to show you technology, but it was a computer error. But again, how many of them happen? I've heard of many of them in Cavan. Just in Cavan, I can only speak in Cavan, but I've heard of many of that happening, and some people didn't get registered to the vote. And it didn't turn up. Some of them turned up to the polling station, said they wouldn't down, even though they registered the vote months in advance. It's insane. But it needs to be sorted again. As I say, in November, we want this to be sorted. It has to be done. But it's very worrying because if it's more than the population of a county and stuff like that, again, especially because they're only estimating, this is only estimation of 500,000. But I say roughly, it'd probably be right. Maybe it's about 300,000. But it'd be right, and then 100,000 probably emigrated, and then a few clerical errors here and there, about 10,000 maybe, give or take. So that'd be only about nearly 200,000. So where did the other 200,000 come from? If say if it's 3,000, say 3,000. So there's another 100,000 with a big question mark on where did they come from? But we have to figure this out, because people have to trust the system and trust elections and stuff like that. And when you see this kind of stuff, people won't trust it. But it's very weird if you ask me. yeah, it's very weird. So let me know what you think. I know a lot of people probably say the government give people that turned up in the middle of the night votes, which they probably maybe did. I don't know what they could have done, because it's a big number now. I wouldn't mind if it's only 5,000, you know. But it's a huge number. As I said at the beginning of this video, it's only a small country. It's not a big, huge country. I don't know how they do it in India or stuff like that. How anybody's able to vote with such a big population. And we can't even deal with 5 million people here to vote. Give or take 5 million. The eligible population is about 2 million, isn't it? Around that. Of people who are eligible to vote. So yeah, let me know what you think. What do we think about this? Do we think it's going to be fixed by November? Let me know. So yeah, thank you for watching. Subscribe and bye.